The only thing that has prevented us from attacking Iran has been the professional military, starting with Admiral Fallon, who was sacked in March, and now Admiral Mullen. If you hear Admiral Mullen, you know, he gets up at this press conference after he's been in Israel and he says, you know, the last thing we need is a third front. We don't need anything to cause instability there. So any nation that would cause that instability, they should think twice about it. Now, who's he talking about? Two nations come to mind: the United States of America and Israel. Whoops. Not supposed to mention Israel in polite conversation. But let me tell you, folks, how I think, and I still think there's at least a 50-50 chance that we will be dragged, or we will let ourselves intentionally be dragged into bombing Iran. See, we don't have really real casualties if we bomb Iran, right? We have these people in the blue suits, these generals, the same ones that told us in Vietnam that we could, you know, bomb the Ho Chi Minh Trail and Ho Chi Minh would give up, and so it is. You know, we have these guys saying, now, Mr. President, we have these really fancy weapons. They can't see us come in because we're stealth people, and we'll drop all the bombs and knock out all these sites, and nobody will be shot down, and just, you know, we'll all, you know, be finished in a little while. At least we would be able to take out a lot of things. Well, that's crazy. That's really crazy. But, you know, our president and our vice president have not been the sanest folks in the world. Now, the uniformed military, Admiral Mullen, and I would say Robert Gates, have been really part of the government that is saying, crazy. You know, think not only of the strategic aspects of this, but what happens when Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz? They would. I mean, even Mullen was forced to admit that at a press conference. Yeah, he said, you know, they could close the Strait, but we're open it right up, okay? Now, what's it going to take, Scott, to open it right up? Marines. Oh, but, you know, so we're sending the Marines. Well, where the hell are we going to get the Marines? They're all in Afghanistan or going there. They're all in Iraq. It's crazy. It's really crazy. But there's one nation that sees, if you believe what they say, an existential threat from Iran. Never mind that they stopped working on the weapons-related part of their nuclear program. Never mind that even if they restarted it, they'd be several years away from an actual nuclear weapon or the means to deliver it. What's the time frame that is driving the Israeli leaders? Yeah, 5 months. Why? Because this president and vice president have undertaken to make sure that they deal with Iraq before they leave office. I'm sorry, deal with Iran before they leave office. They've promised, well, they've said it publicly, but the Israeli leaders believe that they have undertaken this commitment. And, you know, Bush is the kind of person that people like Richard Pearl can go up to and say the kinds of things he said before Iraq. And that was, Mr. President, with all due respect, you're way out on a limb now with respect to Iraq. Were you to not invade and deal with Iraq, you know, the country would never be able to outlive the infamy of not going through with our threats. You would be ashamed. That's the kind of thing that talks to this president. And that's exactly the kind of thing that Richard Pearl, Wolfowitz, and all these folks who still have entree to the president will be saying to him. So how do I think a war could start? I think that given what I've just said here, that the Israeli government has been given the initiative here. They've been given the power to start a war. How could they do it? I don't have enough time to enumerate the ways. There could be an Iranian-flagged PT boat in the Gulf sinking one of our destroyer escorts, an American destroyer escort. Now, you would say, well, the Israelis would never do that, would they? They'd never try to sink an American ship, would they? Well, some of you know, this is an enlightened audience, but when I talk around the country, 300 people, let me just tell you this, 300 people in a church auditorium in Missouri. I forget the name of the city, okay? And I mentioned this in connection with the Walt Mearsheimer book, which really talked about the Israel lobby. Someone asked me what I thought of it, and I said, well, you know, I think it's right on, except I'm really mystified as to why they missed, why they ignored the most convincing proof of the power of the Israel lobby in our country. And I saw people kind of looking, and I said, I'm referring to the USS Liberty, of course. And everybody kind of, and I said, does anyone here know about the USS Liberty? 3 people out of the 300 raised their hands. I picked up the first person there in the third aisle. I said, sir, would you tell us who you are and how you know? Sir, Bryce Lockwood, U.S. Marine Corps, member, Liberty crew. I said, thank you, sir. Would you feel that you could come up here and tell us what happened? Sir, it's been 40 years. I have not been able to do that just yet, but I think I would like to try that tonight. And he came up. He was one of the Marines. He was a Russian linguist, but he was sent on the USS Liberty. And he was one of the Marines that was not killed. He was the only NSA operator who was not killed when the torpedo hit them amidships. And he explained exactly what happened, how the Israelis had reconnoitered the ship starting at 6 o'clock in the morning, came back with their aircraft and their PT boats and did their best to sink it and leave no survivors. How do I know that? Oh, because their machine guns riddled the lifeboats that they put out when they were looked like it was going to sink. Well, I'm going on too long here, but the point is simply that our country is woefully uninformed about these things. Bryce Lockwood set us all straight there, talked about how he rescued one of his colleagues and tried to rescue another, but his friend slipped through his grasp and floated out through the 5-foot or the 5-yard hole made in the hull by the Israeli torpedo. Why were they trying to sink our ship? Well, because they were going up on the Golan Heights the next day, and they didn't want our monitoring ship to tip off our policymakers so that they would do these uncomfortable remonstrations saying, look, please don't do that. They didn't want any of that. Or they were afraid that this USS Liberty right off El Arish there were several hundred Egyptian prisoners had been massacred after digging their own graves. We have this from Israeli journalists, by the way. They were afraid that we would get word of that. Well, let me just end here and look forward to the conversation. But I just would cite one noted author because I think it speaks to the signs of the times here. His name was Dante, okay, and he's been repeated by many people. And what he said was this. He says, the hottest places in hell have been reserved for those who remain neutral in times of crisis. Now, I'm guessing that there's no one neutral here. And I'm guessing that many of you have been really doing more than your share of the work. All I'm saying is that if we don't rise to the occasion, well, we can all just go to hell.